Well, it's way more predictable. Now I know I can get on it and I look at the little app that tells me how long it'll take me to get there, and it actually delivers on that.
The road, it seems underutilized. For example, the cyclists are very pinched together, and as a result, I just find that streetcars are driving slower behind cyclists.
It's faster. You can rely on the streetcars coming.
It's been 1 year to the day since the King Street pilot project was launched, putting streetcars first and kicking cars to the curb. I'm Adrian Ghobrial. Tonight on City News, we're putting the King Street pilot to a time test. I'm down here on King Street. My colleague Shauna Hunt's up on Queen. We'll be seeing just how much faster the King car is versus the Queen. Now, we're going to hear from Shauna in a little bit. And when it comes to the pilot project, a staff report is going to be going to our newly formed City Council in the weeks ahead. They sit down for their first meeting in about a month from now. And if Mayor John Tory has his way, King Street as we know it tonight, it's here to stay. And it could be in for a massive makeover.
When we created the pilot, all we did, frankly, was put up signs, slap down some paint, and we put up some pieces of public art. That was a quick fix. But when you make it permanent, you could look at transforming the boulevards to make the streets wider for more patio space. You just have to look to Europe to see streets that are dynamic, where people, yes, are riding streetcars through and riding bicycles through, but also dynamic destinations for shopping, for tourism, for eating. It's a street that becomes a front porch.
Here's the numbers. Ridership is up 35% for the morning commute on the King car and 27% in the evening. Travel times have improved for streetcar riders anywhere from 1 to 4 minutes on average, depending on the time of day and direction the passengers are heading. The number of cyclists have increased 440% during the afternoon commute in July. While the pilot has improved relief for passengers, transit rider April Engelberg, who finished runner-up in the council race for the Fort York Spadina seat in last month's election, says the pilot has lots of room for improvement.
Every morning, I'd say on average, I can get on the third streetcar that passes me. Even as far back as Strawn, where the pilot doesn't even start, people can't get on the first streetcar. Currently, bikes have approximately 2 feet in between a streetcar track and an art installation where they're supposed to bike, and then they keep having to stop every time behind a streetcar.
Currently, this part of Toronto, also known as Spadina, Fort York, is growing 4 times quicker than any other ward in the city. Councillor Cressy believes that once the new larger streetcars like this one right here are rolled out on Queen Street, that will help with ridership demand issues, especially during the morning commute. Engelberg says the only real way to meet the demands is to extend the planned subway downtown relief line west of University along Queen. Send it up now to Shauna Hunt, who's on King, or rather who's on Queen. I'm still down here on King waiting for our streetcar. We'll be hopping on that in just a moment. Shauna?
Hopped on the Queen streetcar here just 53 seconds ago. That's right, it came up while you were doing your report. So we're hopping on and we're doing it by the stopwatch. So we'll have to compare notes. But as you said, we're heading west to Bathurst, and we're going to, try and find out. We're going to put this to the test and see if the King streetcar is actually any faster than the streetcar here on Queen. Now today, though, I really did zero in on the impact of the King Street pilot project. And the city is saying that, business is up just a bit over the last year, but we're hearing a very different story from restaurant owners, especially those who are set up shop just west of us here in the theatre district. If you take a walk along King Street between John and Blue Jays Way, you'll see a handful of boarded up shops. In half a block, I counted at least 4 restaurants that either moved or went out of business. We don't know specific reasons for all of these closures, but area business owners tell me the doors closed after the project began. The owner of Aroma, an Indian restaurant in the heart of Toronto's theatre district, has been on the block for 14 years and tells me his once booming business is suffering.
First winter month were disaster, 30 to 35% down.
Wow.
And I had to let 2 of my staff go.
According to the city, customer growth was up 0.3% year over year, but the half a dozen or more business owners I chatted with today paint a very different picture.
We're down about 30%.
You're down about 30%?
They tell me jobs have been lost. Servers have had their hours cut in half. I'm hearing up to 11 businesses in just a few blocks have shuttered, some mom pop, some corporate.
So this is one of several businesses that have recently closed up on King Street. And so this used to be Pearl Toronto here. And they did leave a note on the window. And it says they do mention that due to depression in the market, as well as all of these changes on King Street, we will have to close our operation in this location. And this is just one of many stories that we're hearing here in the theatre district.
Over the phone, the general manager of Nollins tells me this pilot project has sucked the life out of this once vibrant neighborhood.
With the number of restaurants that have been closing on the street, there's a lack of ambiance on the street now, and we're missing out on the vibrancy that once was King Street.
The street has undoubtedly changed. I think what you see with the credit card terminal data is that sales are up marginally, and I think there's more still to be done. In the summer, a lot of businesses applied for patios, so the street was more lively. The city put in public parks to try to draw people there, but I think this is still an area where improvements can be made. The city needs to enliven this street. We need to animate it. We need to have people there so that it feels like it's bustling.
What could be better or different about this project?
Well, they could have done, rush hour probably. That's what I would say. And weekend, I think downtown, offices are closed. There's nobody.
Is that part of the problem? Do the restaurant and business owners feel like they just weren't listened to through all of this?
Well, absolutely. It's not pilot project. I call it disaster project.
Now, I'm also hearing from that neighborhood that landlords are having trouble renting out empty spaces because no one wants to move in and take that risk. And coming up just a little later on in the show, we're going to hit the streets and find out how drivers are coping with the ripple effects of the King Street pilot project. In the meantime, though, I'm here on the 501, 4 minutes, 25 seconds into my ride. I think we just passed University. I'm trying to race Adrian to Bathurst. He's on the King line. We're going to see who gets there first.
I'm Adrian Ghobrial.
I'm Shauna Hunt.
We've had our own little time test today on City News. We've been looking at the King Street pilot project. As you can see behind us, you've got the King car. I rode the King car.
And then I hopped on the Queen Street car, both at Yonge Street. We headed west to Bathurst.
And we wanted to see which one was quicker. Now,
guess who won? I'm sorry, I do like to brag. I'm very competitive. So I took the Queen Street car. I beat him by 57 seconds.
I was unaware that it's a race. As we're doing this today, of course, because it's the 1 year anniversary, as we've been telling you on City News, the 1 year anniversary of the King Street pilot project. Now, generally speaking, you'd think the King Street car is quicker. It actually took me about 13 and a half minutes, almost a minute longer than Shauna. Now, I think there's a couple factors to take in. I was on a streetcar that was behind two other streetcars, and it's also a bit of a holiday today.
Okay, yeah, so government workers and bankers, they're off today, and there was a significant difference in the amount of traffic on Queen Street. I mean, we've both been on Queen Street before. We've been on those streetcars. We've been stuck in that traffic trying to get to live locations. And Queen Street was moving, seamlessly. And so obviously that did play a factor into me beating you, but that's okay.
I didn't know it was a competition. Very competitive, this one. Now, of course, just simply from eyeballing it, a lot of people that have taken the Queen Street car say it is much longer. It can take a lot longer than taking the Queen, or rather the King, though today the Queen beat the King. Now, this actually might embolden some politicians who are against the King Street pilot project. Now, there was about 4 councillors who initially voted against it, Shauna, way back when. Mm-hmm. Today, I caught up with Councillor James Pasternak to talk about if Mayor John Tory and those for the pilot project are going to have difficulty whipping the vote in their favour. We know council, it has a whole new outlook, a whole new look. There's about half the amount of council members, and there's a lot more right-leaning conservative councillors than there are Liberal councillors. Here's what Pasternak had to say.
Well, there's no doubt when you look at the numbers here and you look at voting patterns of those councillors that are returning, the ability for the mayor to get the supports he needs for major public policy initiatives is going to be a challenge. I support the mayor on most items and part of the mayor's team, but it is going to be a challenge because we had a strong bench in the last council with 44 councillors. We don't have that now. So every vote matters.
Do you think there's a chance this gets voted down?
I think it could squeak through based on the numbers I've seen. I'm still undecided. I'm going to be talking to the mayor and my colleagues about it, and it'll come to a vote in our new shrunken council.
Now, in my Skype interview with Councillor Pasternak, he said he's still undecided when it comes to how he's going to vote. Councillor Joe Cressy says there's no way this doesn't pass. The pilot will be permanent, according to Councillor Joe Cressy. Now, Shauna, you were talking to some drivers today.
That's right. We took a look at the impact this pilot project has had on drivers, and I can tell you it's taken drivers quite a while to get used to the streetcar-only setup here on King Street. So according to Toronto Police, over 8,500 tickets have been handed out in the last year, and mostly those were for disobeying signs. Not surprising. Now, the city also saying today, touching on the sort of the impact this has had on alternate routes, and the city says really drivers have only been impacted, I guess, a couple more minutes.
The ripple effect of the King pilot project is being felt mostly on Queen and Front Streets. According to the city, drivers are spending up to an extra 2 minutes in their cars on Queen and up to an extra 4 minutes on Front, all depending on what time of day you're behind the wheel. We took this information to the streets.
Oh, it has affected my drive time significantly just because of the congestion in and around this area. A number of the construction in and around the area has really created a lot of bottlenecks, and so as a result, not having access to King Street has really created a big problem for me.
Definitely noticed a congestion more along the Adelaide lanes and along Richmond, but in general I don't find the time has changed that much, no.
See, I do service calls around downtown. It's very hard for me to park maybe 5 blocks down. Can't really find parking anywhere, you know, so getting a lot of tickets here and there, so it's just a hassle.
I never find it inconvenient because I live on King Street, and so I actually find it's a great convenience.
Okay, but it probably does alter your driving time. How much would you say it alters your driving time?
Not at all, because I use Pearl Street, so I come in the back.
It's very bad.
How so?
Very, very bad. Even for business, for everything. Very bad, I have to tell you the truth. You can't even park nowhere, you can't even drive, nothing.
It's been about 1 to 2 minutes on average, which isn't insignificant, but it's fairly minimal. And we've also seen cycling up quite dramatically. So there are trade-offs with any type of project, but overall, the corridor is handling the traffic while making it much better for transit. Keep in mind, there's about 20,000 additional transit riders trips on that corridor. That's a lot of additional movement, and people are able to get in and out of the core much easier now. This is a major improvement for the city, and it came at fairly minimal cost. Think about how much it cost to build the Union Pearson Express to move less people than have been added just from this King Street pilot. So these are some significant improvements brought forward at a fairly affordable cost.
Okay, so this pilot project will last for at least another month, and then what happens?
Well, city staff are putting together a report as we speak. They're crunching the numbers. They're going to present that to council, and then council will be voting on whether or not to make this pilot permanent. Somebody tells me we'll be back here again soon.
Yeah, right. I'll race you.